Calvo's had worked at listening post. Theta 9 for 3 years. It was boring work. Every day he sat in front of his sensor screens and watched the empty blackness of space. Nothing ever happened. Ships came and went on their normal paths. Trade vessels moved between star systems. Military fleets traveled to their stations. Everything was normal. Everything was always normal. That the Valorian hegemony had controlled this part of the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 100 star systems. They had conquered every species they had ever met. Some they had made into servants, others they had simply destroyed. The hegemony was powerful beyond measure, and everyone knew it. Calvo's was a junior sensor technician. He was young with gray skin and 4 eyes like all Valorans. His job was simple: watch the screens, report anything unusual, go home, sleep, come back, watch the screens again. It was not exciting work, but it paid well, and his family was proud that he served the hegemony. On this particular night, Psycho Calvo's was tired. He had not slept well. His partner had argued with him about money, and his mind kept wandering back to their fight. He stared at his screens without really seeing them. The numbers scrolled past. Sensors hummed quietly. Everything was normal. Then something changed. At first, Calvo's did not notice it. Small reading appeared at the edge of his screen. Just a dot, just a tiny piece of data among millions of others. His eyes moved past it, then stopped, then moved back. He leaned forward in his chair. The reading made no sense. The object was moving through real space. At 0.87 c, that meant it was traveling at 87% of the speed of light, but that was impossible. No ship in the hegemony could move that fast without using a full drive, and this object had no full drive signature. It was not jumping through hyperspace. It was just moving, flying through normal space at a speed that should not exist. Calvo's ran a diagnostic on his sensors. Maybe something was broken. Maybe there was a glitch in the system. The diagnostic came back clean. Everything was working perfectly. He watched the dot move across his screen. It was coming from the outer edge of the galaxy, from a region that the hegemony had never explored. That area was marked as empty in all the official records. No planets worth taking, no resources worth mining, no species worth conquering. Just empty space. But something was coming from that empty space now. Calvo's called his supervisor, senior technician. Vorontal was an older Valoran with scars on his face from an old war. He had seen many things in his long career. He had watched fleets destroy entire civilizations. He had tracked ships through battles that lasted for months. Nothing surprised him anymore. He walked over to Calvo's with slow, heavy steps. His 4 eyes looked tired and annoyed. "What is it?" Born to ask. His voice was rough and impatient. "Sir, I have a reading I cannot explain," Calvo said. He pointed at his screen. "This object, it is moving at 0.87 c through real space. No fold signature, no hyperspace wake, just velocity." Vontal looked at the screen. He stared at the numbers for a long moment. Then he made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a grunt. "Your equipment is broken," he said. "Run another diagnostic." "I already did, sir. Everything is working correctly." "Then run it again." Vfall turned and started to walk away. "Sir," Calvo said, and something in his voice made the older Valoran, stop. The object just changed. Course. Vornal turned back slowly, his four eyes narrowed. He walked back to the screen and looked at the data again. The dot had indeed changed direction. It was no longer moving in a straight line. It had turned. It was now heading toward hegemony space. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Wake up, the station commander, Borental finally said. His voice was no longer tired or annoyed. It was tight with something that might have been fear. Now the message traveled up the chain of command with unusual speed. Station commander. Dizix read the report and immediately sent it to Sector Command. Sector Command read it and sent it to Regional Authority. Regional Authority read it and sent it to High Command on the capital world of Valoria Prime. Within 6 hours, the most powerful beings in the hegemony were staring at the same dot that Calvos had first noticed on his screen. The Council of Admirals met in the war chamber deep beneath the Imperial Palace. The room was massive, with walls made of black stone and a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. A huge holographic display floated, the center showing the unknown objects path across the galaxy. There were 12 admirals in total. They commanded the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Their fleets numbered in the millions of ships, their soldiers numbered in the trillions. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy they could not crush. Now they stared at a single dot on a map, and none of them knew what to say. Grand Admiral Keith spoke first. He was the oldest of them, with skin that had turned almost white with age. He had served the hegemony for over 200 years. It must be a sensor error, he said. No ship can travel that fast without full technology. It is physically impossible. We have verified the reading 17 times, said Admiral Lara, who commanded the 7th expansion fleet. She was younger than the others, but her reputation for brilliance and ruthlessness was well known. The data is accurate. The object is real. Then what is it? Asked another admiral. A natural phenomenon, a comet, an asteroid. Natural objects do not change course. The Sarah replied. This thing is being controlled. It is a vessel of some kind. A vessel from where? Grand Admiral Cathy demanded. We have catalogued every species in this region of space. Every civilization that can build ships is either under our control or destroyed. There is no one left, apparently. There is someone, the Sarah said. Quietly, the room fell silent. The admiral stared at the dot on the display. It continued to move toward them, impossibly fast, impossibly steady. Emperor Voreth the Eternal entered the war chamber 1 hour later. He was tall, even by Valoran standards, with golden markings on his gray skin that showed his royal bloodline. He had ruled the hegemony for 347 years. In that time, he had overseen the conquest of 6 new species and the expansion of the empire by 30 star systems. He was called the Eternal because it seemed like he would never die. His enemies certainly did, but he went on forever. The admiral stood and bowed as he entered. Voreth waved them back to their seats with an impatient gesture. Tell me, he said, looking at the display. Grand Admiral Cathers explained the situation. The unknown object, the impossible speed, the change in course, the fact that it matched nothing in any database. Voreth listened without expression. When the explanation was finished, he stood in Silence for a long moment, studying the holographic dot theories, he said. Finally, the admirals looked at each other. Admiral Lara spoke. 3 possibilities, my emperor. First, this is a sensor anomaly that we have not yet identified. We've seen strange readings from that region of space before. Second, this is a natural phenomenon we do not understand. There are many things in the universe that still surprise us. Third, she paused. Third, this is a vessel from a civilization we have never encountered, a species that developed beyond our knowledge in a region we dismissed as empty. If it is a species, Bareth said slowly, where did they come from? How did they hide from us for so long? I do not know, my emperor, but if I may speak freely, Voreth nodded, if there is a civilization out there that can build ships faster than ours, Dora said, then we need to know everything about them immediately before they learn too much about us. The emperor was quiet for another long moment. Then he made his decision. Send a fleet to intercept, he commanded. I want answers. I want to know what this thing is, where it came from, and what it wants. Use whatever force is necessary. Admiral Lara stood and saluted. I will lead the intercept personally, my emperor. Veth looked at her with his cold, ancient eyes. Do not fail me, Admiral. The hegemony does not tolerate mysteries. The 7th expansion fleet departed within 12 hours. 40 warships moved through fold space, jumping across light years. In moments, they emerged in the path of the unknown object, spreading out in a standard intercept formation. Admiral Lara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Victory. It was the largest ship in the fleet, over 5 km long, bristling with weapons capable of destroying planets. She had commanded this ship for 20 years. She had used it to subjugate 9 species. She knew its power better than anyone, but as she watched the sensor displays, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. It took her a moment to recognize the sensation. It was uncertainty. The unknown object was still approaching. It had not slowed down. It had not changed course to avoid the fleet. It was simply coming toward them, steady and fast, as if the 40 warships in its path meant nothing at all. Time to intercept, the Zara asked. 4 hours at current velocities. Her tactical officer replied, 4 hours. The Zara settled into her command chair and waited. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Tension in the air was thick enough to taste. The hours passed slowly. The Zara used the time to study everything they knew about the unknown object. It was small, much smaller than she had expected, only about 300 m long, a tiny thing compared to her flagship. The shape was unusual, sleek and angular, with lines that suggested speed. Even when standing still, there were no visible weapons, no shields that their sensors could detect, no markings that identified it as belonging to any known species. It was a ghost, a mystery, wrapped in metal, hurtling through space toward the greatest military power in the galaxy. When the object finally dropped out of its impossible velocity, the entire fleet tensed. Disara stood up from her chair, her 4 eyes fixed on the main display. The vessel hung in space at the edge of the system, perfectly still. It was even stranger than the sensor data had suggested. The hull seemed to be made of some material they could not identify. It reflected light in ways that hurt the eyes. It was beautiful in a way, beautiful and deeply Wrong, hail them, the Sarah ordered. The communications officer sent a standard greeting in every language, the hegemony. New mathematical sequences, trade code, universal signals that any space faring species should recognize. For a long moment there was no response. Then the unknown vessel replied. It was not words, not at first, it was numbers. Mathematical constants, prime numbers in sequence, the ratio of a circle, circumference to its diameter, the speed of light, the gravitational constant, the basic truths that were the same everywhere in the universe. They are establishing a linguistic baseline, the communications officer said, excitement creeping into his voice despite the tension. They want to communicate, then communicate. The Sarah said, ask them who they are, ask them where they come from. The exchange took time. Numbers became concepts, concepts became simple. Ideas became words. Slowly, painfully, the two sides built a bridge of understanding across the void. Finally, the unknown vessel sent a clear message. It was a set of coordinates, a location deep in the outer arm of the galaxy in the region the hegemony had always dismissed as empty. Along with the coordinates came a single concept, repeated 3 times, home, home, home. Desara stared at the message. She felt a chill run down her spine, though she would never admit it. Send our demands, she said. They will identify themselves. They will explain their technology. They will submit to inspection by hegemony forces. If they refuse, they will be treated as hostile. The message was sent. The fleet waited. The response came quickly this time. Just one word, translated through the mathematical cipher they had built together. Unwise. The Sarah felt her jaw tightened. No one spoke to the hegemony this way. No one refused their demands. Not for 12,000 years they dare, she whispered. Then, louder, all ships, weapons ready, lock onto the unknown vessel. Bond vessel, 40 warships powered up. Their weapons, energy cannons hummed with deadly power. Antimatter torpedoes, armed in their launch tubes, targeting systems painted. The small, strain vessel with 100 different death sentences. The unknown vessel did not move. It hung in space, silent and still, waiting. They have made their choice, the Sarah said. Her voice was cold and hard. Fire, the space between the fleet and the unknown vessel filled with light. Beams of concentrated energy stabbed out from the warships. Torpedoes streak through the void, their antimatter warheads ready to annihilate anything they touched. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. And the unknown vessel moved, not dodged, not evaded. Moved. It slipped between the energy beams like water through fingers. It danced around the torpedoes as if they were standing still. It moved in ways that should have been impossible, ways that made the Tsar's eyes hurt just watching. Not a single shot touched it. The bridge of the eternal victory was silent. The officers stared at their screens with wide eyes and open mouths. No one had ever seen anything like this. No one had even imagined anything like this. The unknown vessel completed its impossible dance and came to rest directly in front of the Zara's flagship, close, so close that she could see it through the main view screen without magnification. Close enough as one of her officers whispered in horror to touch. It hung there, silent and still, almost mockingly calm. Then it sent one final message before turning and flying away at that same impossible speed, vanishing into the darkness of space as quickly as it had appeared. The message was simple. Just 2 words: we remember the Sarah stood on her bridge, surrounded by her mighty fleet, and for the first time in her long career she felt truly afraid, because she understood now what those words meant. The Gemini had met something new, something that had been watching them, something that knew what they had done, and somewhere in the empty reaches of space that something was waiting. The report she sent to Emperor Vor was the hardest thing she had ever written. She told the truth. All of it: the impossible speed, the impossible maneuvers, the impossibility of everything they had witnessed. She did not know what would happen next. No one did, but as she sat alone in her quarters staring out at the stars, she could not shake the feeling that the universe had just changed forever. The hegemony had ruled unchallenged for 12,000 years. That time, she suspected, was coming to an end. These humans, he said slowly, have been watching us for 8 centuries. They have seen everything we have done, every victory, every conquest, and they chose to hide rather than fight us. What does that tell you? That they feared us, Grand Admiral Catholic said confidently. No, V shook his head. It tells me they did not think we were worth fighting. We were not a threat to them. We were an experiment, a test. They wanted to see what we would do when we thought no one was watching. He turned to face his emeralds, his golden markings seeming to glow in the dim light of the war chamber. We failed their test, and now they are coming to deliver the results. Then we fight. Cather said, we have millions of ships, trillions of soldiers. No matter how advanced their technology, they cannot match our numbers, can't they? Desara asked quietly. We thought that region of space was empty. We were wrong. We thought our sensors were the best in the galaxy. We were wrong. We thought our weapons could destroy any threat. We were wrong. What else are we wrong about? The question hung in the air, unanswered and unanswerable. Over the following days, more reports came in from the border regions. Human ships had been spotted, always at extreme range, always moving at impossible speeds. They never attacked. They never communicated. They simply appeared, observed, and vanished. The hegemony subjects noticed. The conquered species who served as laborers and soldiers and servants began to whisper among themselves. The masters were afraid something was coming that even the hegemony could not stop. On a dozen worlds there were small rebellions. Nothing serious. A riot here, a protest there, quickly crushed by hegemony forces, but the fact that they happened at all was troubling. The conquered peoples had been quiet for generations. They had accepted their fate. Now, suddenly they were restless. Vorath ordered increased security on all worlds, more troops, more surveillance, more executions of troublemakers. The Empire would not show weakness, not now, not ever, but the human ships kept appearing, watching, waiting. Then 3 weeks after the first contact, something changed. A message arrived at every hegemony communication station simultaneously. It bypassed all security protocols. It appeared on every screen, every display, every device that could receive a signal. There was no way to block it, no way to stop it. The message was in the hegemony's own language, perfectly translated. People of the Valoran hegemony, we are the humans of the Stellar Union. For 800 years we have watched your empire grow. We have seen your triumphs and your crimes. We have documented everything. We gave you time to change, to grow, to become something better than what you were. Instead, you continued down the same path. You conquered, you destroyed, you erased entire species from existence. The time for watching is over. We do not seek war, we do not desire conquest. We have no wish to rule over you or take what are yours, but we will no longer stand by while innocents suffer. Your empire will face justice for its crimes, not justice by our hands, but justice by the hands of those you have wronged. We will ensure that the truth is known. We will ensure that the victims have their voices heard. The choice of how this happens is yours. You can cooperate in the process, will be peaceful. You can resist, and you will learn that our patience, while vast, is not infinite. We do not threaten, we simply tell you what is coming. The galaxy is watching. Make your choice. The message ended. Silence fell across the hegemony. In the war chamber, Emperor Vorath read the message 3 times. His hands did not shake, his face did not change, but Wayne looked up at his admirals. They saw something in his eyes that had never been there before. Fear. They think they can judge us, he said softly. They think they can make us answer for our history, for doing what every strong species has done since the beginning of time. He stood up straight, his voice hardening. They are wrong. The hegemony does not answer to anyone. We do not bow. We do not beg. We do not submit. He turned to face the display, which still showed the human message. Send a response. Tell them that if they want justice, they will have to take it by force, and tell them that the hegemony has never lost war. Grand Admiral Cathridge smiled grimly. It will be done, my emperor. But Desara said nothing. She stared at the message, her 4 eyes troubled, thinking about the vessel that had danced through her fleet's weapons like they were nothing. She thought about the human words. We do not threaten. We simply tell you what is coming. She believed them, and that terrified her more than anything else. Explain yourself, V commanded. Humans have been preparing for this moment for 800 years. Desara said they knew we would be here. They knew what we would do. They have planned for every possibility, every response we could make. They've already anticipated. She gestured at the holographic display, where the human tactical analysis still glowed. They showed us this for a reason. They want us to understand that they can destroy us if they choose. But they also showed us something else. They showed us that they are not trying to destroy us. They want us to face justice. They want us to answer for what we have done, and you think we should simply surrender. Kathy's voice dripped with contempt. I think we should consider what happens if we do not. Sarah replied, the humans have technology we cannot match. They have information we cannot hide. They have already turned our subjects against us without firing a single shot. What happens when they do start shooting? No one had an answer. Over the next few days, the situation grew worse. Rebellions broke out on 7 worlds simultaneously. Not small protests or riots, full-scale uprisings. Slave populations rose against their masters. Conquered peoples demanded freedom. Some of the rebels even wore human symbols, though no humans had contacted them directly. The hegemony responded with force, as it always did. Troops were deployed, cities were bombed, millions died in the suppression efforts. But for every rebellion crushed, 2 more seemed to spring up. The human information had spread too Far too fast, the truth was out in it. Could not be pushed back into the shadows. Meanwhile, the human ships continued to appear at the edges of hegemony space, more of them now dozens. At a time, sometimes hundreds. They never came close enough to engage. They simply watched their impossible speeds, allowing them to escape any attempt to intercept them. They were waiting. Entire galaxy knew it. The humans were waiting for something. Emperor Vorith grew more paranoid with each passing day. He saw conspiracies everywhere. He trusted no one. 3 of his advisors were executed for suspected disloyalty. 2 admirals were arrested on charges that were never made public. The Zara was called before the Emperor privately. Late one night, you spoke of surrender. Boris said. His voice was tired. He looked older than she had ever seen him. Do you still believe that is our only option? The Zara chose her words carefully. I believe we have few good options, my Emperor. The humans have shown us what they can do, but they have also shown us that they do not want to use their full power. They speak of justice, not destruction. Perhaps there is room for negotiation. Negotiation. Vorith said the word like it was poison. You want me to negotiate with aliens who seek to judge our empire too? Make us pay for winning wars. I want the hegemony to survive, Disara said quietly. That has always been my only goal. Right now, survival may require us to do things we have never done before. Vor was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. Do you know why I have ruled for 300 years? Why no one has been able to remove me from power? The Zara shook her head. Because I have always been willing to do what others would not, to make the hard choices, to sacrifice what needed to be sacrificed. He looked at her with eyes that seemed to hold ancient darkness. I will not be remembered as the emperor who surrendered, who let aliens dictate terms to us, who destroyed 12,000 years of glory because he was afraid. Then what will you be remembered as? The Zara asked. Vorith smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I will be remembered as the emperor who fought, who did not yield, who faced the storm and refused to bow. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Prepare the fleets, all of them. Every ship we have. We will meet the humans in battle, and we will show them what the hegemony truly is. Disara stood and saluted, her heart heavy. As you command, my emperor. She left the chamber knowing that she had just witnessed the beginning of the end. The hegemony was going to war against an enemy it could not defeat. And somewhere in the void, the humans were waiting. They had been waiting for 800 years. They could wait a little longer. The war chamber had never been so quiet. Emperor Vorith stood before the holographic display, watching the recording for the 23rd time. The unknown vessel danced through the hegemonies. Weapons fire like it was nothing, like the combined firepower of 40 warships was just rain falling around it. Admirals sat in their seats, none of them willing to speak first. They had all watched the recording. They had all seen the impossible happened, and now they waited for their emperor to tell them what it meant. Barface showed nothing. He had ruled for over 300 years by never letting anyone see what he was thinking. Fear was weakness. Confusion was weakness. The emperor could show neither. But inside, where no one could see, Vorith felt something he had not felt since he was a young prince. Fighting for the throne, he felt doubt. Explanations, he said finally, his voice flat and cold. Grand Admiral HFY was the first to try. My emperor, there must be some form of trickery involved. Perhaps the vessel projected false images, perhaps it used some technology to make it appear that it was dodging our weapons when it was actually somewhere else entirely. Our sensors tracked it the entire time. Admiral Desara said she had returned from the failed intercept just hours ago, and the exhaustion showed on her face. Every ship, every scanner, every piece of equipment, we have confirmed the same thing. The vessel was where we saw it. It simply moved faster than anything we have ever recorded, faster than physics allows, another admiral muttered. Physics does not care what we allow, Dara replied sharply. The universe follows its own rules. Perhaps there are rules we do not yet understand. Morath held up a hand, and the room fell silent. Instantly, the vessel, he said slowly. Where is it now? It returned to the coordinates it gave us. The SAR answered, the region we marked as empty space. Our long-range sensors have detected activity there, energy signatures, communications traffic, things we somehow missed before. Missed? Marath's voice went dangerously soft. How do you miss an entire civilization? No one had an answer. The truth was uncomfortable. The hegemony had scanned that region centuries ago and found nothing of interest, no habitable worlds, no valuable resources, no signs of intelligent life. So they had marked it as empty and forgotten about it. They had been looking for things to conquer, and when they found nothing worth conquering, they moved on. It had never occurred to them that someone might be hiding there, that someone might have chosen to stay hidden. We need more information, Varth decided. Send scouts, long-range reconnaissance vessels. I want to know everything about this region, every planet, every ship, every life form, and if they are detected, Grand Admiral Kath asked. Borath's eyes went cold. Then we will learn how they react. Either way, we will have answers. The scout ships departed within the day. They were small, fast vessels designed for observation rather than combat. Their crews were the best in the fleet, trained to watch without being seen, to gather information and return safely. Only one of them made it back. Captain Ivos had commanded scout vessels. For 40 years, he had explored uncharted space, observed hostile species, and survived dangers that would have killed lesser officers. But when he stood before the Council of Admirals to give his report, his hands were shaking. We entered the target region through different approach vectors, he began, his voice carefully controlled. Standard protocol spread out. Observe, report back. At first everything seemed normal. We detected energy signatures ahead as expected. We moved closer to investigate. He paused, gathering himself. The other 4 ships were detected first. I do not know how our stealth systems were fully operational. There was no way any technology we know of could have found them, but they were found within seconds. What happened to them? Vor demanded. Nothing violent, my emperor. No weapons fire, no explosions. Their ship simply stopped. All power went dead. Engines, weapons, life support, everything. The crews were left floating in dead ships with only emergency supplies to keep them alive. And then other vessels came for them. Larger ships. They took the crews aboard, and the last communication we received indicated they were being treated well, given food, medical attention, quarters to sleep in, but they were also told they would not be. Returning home, the admirals exchanged glances. This was not how wars worked. When you captured enemies, you interrogated them. You tortured them for information. You executed them to send a message. You did not give them food and comfortable beds. My ship was the farthest out, Yeptos continued. I do not know why I was allowed to leave. Perhaps they wanted someone to carry a message back. Before I fled, I managed to gather some long-range observations. He activated a holographic display, and the war chamber filled with images. There were hundreds of worlds. That was the first shock. The region they had dismissed as empty contained hundreds of inhabited planets. Cities glowed on the surfaces. Stations orbited in space. Ships moved between stars in numbers that rivaled the hegemony's own fleets. We found references to what they call themselves. Ito said it took some time to translate, but we believe we have it. Right? He paused as if the word itself was difficult to say. They call themselves humans. The word hung in the air. It meant nothing to any of them. Humans, a name with no history, no records, no place in any hegemony database, a complete unknown. How is this possible? Grand Admiral Kafir demanded. How can an entire civilization exist in our own galaxy without us knowing? Because they did not want us to. No, Desara said quietly. She was staring at the images with an expression that mixed fear with something else. Fascination, perhaps, or respect. They saw us coming centuries ago. They saw what we were, and they chose to hide. Then why reveal themselves now? Vorith asked. I may have an answer to that, my emperor. Yepto said. The humans who took my crew. They spoke with them freely, openly. They answered questions, and then they said they have been watching us since first contact between our species. That was 800 years ago, before the current dynasty, before the great expansions. They found us, studied us, and decided to remain hidden. Why? Yeptos looked uncomfortable. They said they wanted to see what we would become, whether we would grow beyond our nature, whether we would learn to coexist with others. The silence that followed was heavy, and what did they conclude? Vor's voice was barely above a whisper. They concluded that we would not. They watched us destroy the Kathmari. They watched us enslave the Hollow Ones. They watched us burn the garden worlds of the VTHK. They documented everything, every conquest, every extinction, every cruelty. Yefto swallowed hard. Before continuing, they said they gave us 800 years to prove them wrong. We did not, and now they have decided to stop watching. Emperor Varth stood perfectly still, his face betrayed nothing, but inside he was calculating. 800 years of observation, 800 years of preparation, while the hegemony had been conquering and destroying. These humans had been building and planning. The vessel that had humiliated the Tsar's fleet was not an accident. It was a message, a demonstration of power, a warning, and he had responded to that warning with violence. What do they want? Vor asked. Finally, they did not say, my emperor, only that the time for watching was over. The council debated for hours. After Ivos was dismissed, some admirals wanted immediate military action. Massive fleets sent to destroy the humans. Before they could strike first, others counseled caution. The demonstration of the unknown vessel proved that human Technology was beyond anything the hegemony possessed. An attack might fail catastrophically. A few voices quieter than the others suggested something that had never been suggested in the history of the hegemony: diplomacy, negotiation, perhaps even peace. Vor listened to all of them without comment. When the debates finally died down, he stood and walked to the center of the room. The hegemony's response to the human message was swift and proud. Emperor Voreth composed it himself, sitting alone in his private chambers with only the stars for company. He chose every word carefully. He wanted the humans to understand exactly what they were dealing with. The message was broadcast across all frequencies, aimed at the region of space where the humans lived. To the so-called stellar union, you speak of justice as if it is something you can deliver. You speak of crimes as if you have the right to judge. You are wrong on both counts. The Valoran hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. We have brought order to chaos. We have created civilization where there was none. The species we conquered were weak and divided. We gave them purpose. We gave them structure. If some did not survive, it is because they were not fit to survive. This is the way of the universe. The strong rule, the weak serve. This is not cruelty, it is nature. You have hidden in the darkness for 800 years, watching and judging. If you were strong, you would have acted long ago. Your silence proves that you are not what you claim to be. You are afraid. We are not. If you wish to bring your justice to the hegemony, come and try. You will find that we do not bend, we do not break, and we do not lose. This is our only response. There will be no negotiations. There will be no discussions. There will be only victory or death. The hegemony has chosen. Now you must choose. As well, the message was sent. The empire waited. For 3 days. There was silence. No human ships appeared. No communications came back. The border regions were quiet. Some of the admirals began to hope that the humans had reconsidered, that the show of strength had worked. The Sarah knew better. She spent those 3 days preparing her fleet for battle. She did not know what form the human response would take, but she knew it was coming. People who built ships that moved like theirs did not back down from challenges. On the 4th day, the humans replied. It was not a message this time, it was data. Massive amounts of data transmitted to every corner of the hegemony simultaneously. Files upon files upon files, each one carefully organized and labeled. The first files were historical records, detailed accounts of every species the hegemony had conquered or destroyed over the past 800 years. Names, dates, numbers, how many had died, how many had been enslaved, how many had simply vanished, their entire civilizations erased from existence. The Cathari were first. They had been a peaceful species, known throughout their region of space for their art and philosophy. When the hegemony arrived, they had tried to negotiate. They had offered trade, cultural exchange, mutual cooperation. The hegemony had demanded complete surrender. The Cathmary had refused. Within 1 year, every Cathmary world had been burned. Not a single member of the species survived. The human records included images, video, audio, first-hand accounts from hegemony, soldiers who had participated in the extinction, things that had been classified, things that had been hidden, things that most Valorans had never Known happened. The hollow ones came. Next, a species that developed in the asteroid belts of their home system. Their bodies adapted to live in zero gravity. They had been strange and alien even by galactic standards. The hegemony had enslaved them, using their unique abilities to mine resources from places that were too dangerous for other species. Millions had died in the mines. Those who survived were worked until they could work no more, then disposed of. The human records showed it all. Work counts, the death tolls, the breeding programs designed to produce more workers. It was all there, documented with clinical precision. Species after species, world after world, the data went on and on. 800 years of conquest and cruelty laid out for everyone to see. But the humans did not stop there. Mixed in with the historical records were other files, technical analyses, military assessments, detailed breakdowns of hegemony ships, weapons, and defenses. The humans had not just been watching the hegemony's crimes. They had been studying the hegemony's military capabilities, and they were not impressed that the files showed exactly how human technology compared to hegemony technology, propulsion systems, energy weapons, shield generators, defense networks. In every category, the humans were generations ahead, not slightly better, not marginally superior, completely and utterly beyond anything the hegemony could match. One file showed a simulation of the battle between the Tsar's fleet and the unknown vessel. The humans had recreated it perfectly, showing exactly how their ship had evaded every shot, but they had added something to the simulation. They had added what would have happened if the vessel had fought back. In the simulation, the Tsar's 40 ships were destroyed in less than 30 seconds. Final file was the most disturbing of all. It was a complete analysis of the hegemony's strategic position, every fleet, every base, every defensive installation. The humans knew where everything was. They knew how it moved. They knew its strengths and weaknesses, and they had plans for dealing with all of it. The file was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. This is what we know. This is what we can do. This is what will happen if you choose to fight. Emperor Varth read the files alone. He spent hours going through them, his face growing darker with each passing page. When he finally emerged from his chambers, he called an emergency meeting of the Council of Admirals. They know everything, he said without preamble. Our fleet positions, our defensive capabilities, our tactical doctrines, everything we have tried to keep secret. They know how Grand Admiral Kath demanded. We have the best security systems in the galaxy. No one can penetrate our networks. Apparently the humans can. The Sarah said she had already reviewed the files herself. They have probably been inside our systems for centuries, watching, learning. We never knew, because they never did anything to reveal themselves until now, Voreth said grimly. What about the historical records? Another admiral asked. The things they released about the Kefari and the others, our citizens are seeing them. They are asking questions. This was perhaps the most dangerous part of the human response. The hegemony had always controlled information carefully. The official history taught that the conquered species had been dangerous or inferior or both, that the hegemony had done what was necessary for the good of all, that the victors had been merciful whenever possible. The human records told a different story, and now that Story was spreading on dozens of worlds. Hegemony citizens were reading about what their empire had really done. Some refused to believe it. They called it human propaganda, lies designed to weaken the hegemony's resolve, but others were not so sure. The records were too detailed, too consistent, too filled with evidence that could be verified, and the conquered peoples, the servants and laborers who made up most of the empire's workforce, were reading the records too. They were learning that their master's power was built on bones, that the hegemony was not as invincible as it claimed to be, that someone out there was willing to challenge them. The rebellions that had started as whispers were becoming shouts. We must act decisively, Grand Admiral Catherine said. Send the fleets to crush any resistance, make examples of the troublemakers, remind our subjects why they fear us. And what of the humans? The Tsara asked. While we are putting down rebellions, what will they be doing? The humans are not our immediate concern. Our subjects are. The humans are exactly our concern. The Tsara said, her voice rising. They release this information for a reason. They want our subjects to rebel. They want us distracted. They want us fighting on multiple fronts while they prepare their real attack. Ben, what do you suggest? Vorath asked coldly. Bysara hesitated. What she was about to say went against everything she had ever believed, everything she had ever been taught, but she said it anyway. I suggest we consider the possibility that we cannot win this fight. The silence that followed was absolute. The other admiral stared at her as if she had spoken blasphemy. In a way she had. By the end, less than a third of the hegemony fleet survived intact. The rest were scattered across space. Dead ships with living crews waiting to be collected by human vessels that moved among them like shepherds gathering lost sheep. The prisoners were treated well, given food and water, medical attention. For the wounded, clean quarters to sleep in. They were not tortured for information. They were not executed as examples. They were simply held awaiting whatever would come next. News of the defeat spread across the hegemony faster than anyone could contain it. 2. Attacks, both absolute failures. The mightiest military force in the galaxy, humiliated without the humans even trying to cause casualties. The rebellions that had been simmering now exploded into open revolution. On dozens of worlds, conquered peoples rose up against their masters. They had seen that the hegemony could be defeated. They had seen that the humans were not going to kill everyone who opposed them. For the first time in generations, they had hope. Admiral Thara had not participated in either attack. She had been held back, commanding the defense of Valoria Prime itself. Now she watched the situation collapse from her position in orbit around the home world. Her communications officer approached with a worried expression. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. The Tsara turned, put it through. The face that appeared on her screen was unlike anything she had seen before. It was human. She knew that from the images in the files, but this was the first time she had seen one directly. The woman had dark hair streaked with gray, brown skin and eyes that seemed to carry an old wisdom. Admiral Lara, the human, said, I am Commander Sarah Chun of the Stellar Union vessel Wanderer. I was the pilot of the ship that first made contact with your fleet. The Tsara felt a chill run through her. This woman had been inside that small vessel that danced through her weapon's fire like it was nothing. What do you want? The Sarah asked. To talk, Chun replied, not as enemies, as people who both want this to end without more suffering. You have destroyed our fleet. You are systematically dismantling our empire. And you want to talk? We have disabled your fleet, Chun corrected gently. We have tried very hard not to destroy anything. Your ships can be reactivated. Your people are alive. We have killed only when we had no other choice. That matters to us. The Sarah did not know what to say. In her entire career, she had never encountered an enemy who tried not to kill. War was death. War was destruction. That was how it had always been. Why, she asked finally, you could wipe us out. Your technology is so far beyond ours that we might as well be fighting with sticks and stones. Why show mercy to an empire that has never shown mercy to anyone? Chen was quiet for a moment before answering, because mercy is not about whether someone deserves it. It is about who we choose to be. We spent 800 years preparing for this moment, 800 years building ships and weapons and technologies that could defeat you. But we also spent that time thinking about what kind of civilization we wanted to become. We could have struck first 800 years ago when we first found you. We could have destroyed the hegemony before it grew too strong. It would have been easy. You were so much weaker then, but that would have made us no better than you. We would have been just another empire killing those who might someday be a threat. We decided that was not who we wanted to be, so we watched, we waited, we prepared, but we also hoped. We hoped you would change, that you would grow beyond conquest and cruelty, that we would never have to use the weapons we were building. And now, Dara asked, now we are here because you did not change, because you continued to destroy and enslave and erase entire peoples from existence, because someone had to stop you and no one else could. Chun leaned closer to the screen. But we still do not want to destroy you. We want you to face what you have done, to answer to the species you have wronged, to find a way to move forward that does not require more death. The Emperor will never accept that. Thara said, I know. Chun replied sadly, that is why I'm talking to you instead of him. The transmission ended, but Dara sat in silence for a long time afterward. She thought about her career, the battles she had fought, the people she had conquered, the orders she had followed. Without question, she thought about the Cathmari who had only wanted peace, about the Hollow Ones worked to death in the mines, about all the others who had died so that the hegemony could grow. She thought about what the human had said, mercy is not about whether someone deserves it, it is about who we choose to be. For the first time in her long life, Admiral Lysara began to wonder if she had been wrong about everything. The hegemony assembled the largest fleet in its history, 2 million ships, gathered at the border of human space, their engines burning bright against the darkness, battleships the size of cities, carriers holding thousands of fighters, destroyers and cruisers and frigates beyond counting. It was a force that had crushed 100 civilizations, a force that had never known defeat. Admiral Lara stood on the bridge of the Eternal Victory, watching the fleet assemble through her viewscreen. She had commanded many battles in her career. She had won all of them. But as she looked at the massive force under her command, she felt no confidence, only a cold, quiet dread. The humans had stopped appearing at the border, there. Ships which had been watching for weeks had withdrawn. Some of the admirals took this as a sign of fear. They believed the humans had seen the hegemony's military might and decided to retreat. The Sarah knew better. The humans were not afraid, they were simply done watching. Emperor Voreth addressed the fleet from his throne room on Valoria Prime. His image appeared on every screen, his voice filled every speaker. Warriors of the hegemony, he began. Today we face our greatest challenge, an enemy that is hidden in the shadows for centuries has finally shown itself. They believe they can judge us. They believe they can make us answer for our victories. They are wrong. For 12,000 years the hegemony has stood as the greatest power in the galaxy. We did not achieve this through weakness or hesitation. We achieved it through strength, through will, through the understanding that the universe belongs to those bold enough to take it. The humans call themselves the Stellar Union. They speak of justice and truth. But what is truth? Truth is what the victors decide. And we will be the victors today, as we have always been. Go now, show these humans what happens to those who challenge their hegemony. Let the galaxy remember this day as the moment when we proved once again that we cannot be defeated. The fleet responded with a roar of loyalty that echoed across millions of ships. Warriors shouted their battle cries, weapons powered up, engines ignited. The invasion of human space began. The first wave crossed into the target region expecting immediate resistance. There was none. The ships moved forward unopposed, their sensors searching for enemies that did not appear. The admirals grew confident. Perhaps the humans were not as powerful as they had claimed. Perhaps their technology was impressive, but their numbers were small. Perhaps this would be easier than expected. They were wrong. The humans did not meet the hegemony at the border. They waited deeper in their territory at a place of their choosing. When the first hegemony scouts reached the human defensive line, they found something that made them stop in shock. It was not a fleet. It was not a battle station. It was a single ship. The vessel was larger than anything the hegemony had ever built, 10 kilometers from bow to stern, covered in weapons that the scouts could not identify. It hung in space alone, blocking the path to the human worlds beyond. One ship against 2 million. Grand Admiral Keth commanded the main battle fleet from his flagship. When he received the scout reports, he laughed. They send one ship to stop us, he said to his bridge crew. This is their great power. This is what they have spent 800 years building. One vessel, no matter how large, cannot stand against our numbers. He gave the order to attack. The hegemony fleet surged forward, spreading out into attack formation, energy weapons powered up across millions of ships. Torpedoes armed in their tubes, fighters launched by the thousands. It was the greatest display of military force the galaxy had ever seen. The human ship did not move. It hung in space, silent and still, waiting for them to come. When the first wave was in range, the hegemony opened fire. A storm of destruction swept toward the human vessel. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Enough energy to light a sun. The human ship activated its shields. The first shots hit and vanished, absorbed, nullified. More shots followed, and the same thing happened. The shields did not flicker. They did not strain. They simply absorbed everything the hegemony threw at them as if it was nothing. Catherine stared at his displays in disbelief. Impossible, he whispered. That is impossible. Then the human ship responded. It did not fire weapons, not exactly. It released something else, pulses of energy that expanded outward like ripples in water, moving through the hegemony fleet at impossible speed. Every ship the pulses touched went dark. Kathy watched in horror as the first wave of his fleet simply stopped. Engines died, weapons went offline, lights went out. Ships that had been charging toward the enemy moments ago were now drifting helplessly. In the void, the pulses kept coming, wave after wave spreading through the fleet. Ships tried to maneuver, tried to retreat, tried to do anything to avoid the effect. It did not matter. Pulses were too fast, too widespread. There was no escape. In less than 10 minutes, half of the hegemony's invasion fleet was dead in space, but they were not destroyed. That was the strangest part. The ships were intact. The crews were alive. They had simply been switched off like lanterns with their flames blown out. Catholics ordered a full retreat. The remaining ships turned and ran, fleeing back toward hegemony space as fast as their engines could carry them. The human vessel did not pursue. It simply hung in space, watching them go. The message that came afterward was brief. That was a warning. We did not destroy your ships because we did not wish to kill your people, but make no mistake, we choose not to. Remember that and consider your next actions carefully. Emperor Voreth received the news in his throne room. He did not rage. He did not shout. He simply sat in silence, his face like stone as his generals explained what had happened. Half his fleet disabled without a single shot being fired in return. Over 1 million ships floating dead in space. Their crews prisoners of an enemy that had not even tried to kill them. How? He asked finally. We do not know, my emperor, one of the generals admitted. Our scientists are analyzing the data. Now, the energy pulses appear to disrupt all powered systems simultaneously. Ships, weapons, life support. Everything. We have never seen anything like it, and the ships that escaped, the humans let them go. They could have disabled them as well, but they chose not to. Thor was quiet for a long moment. They are playing with us, he said softly, showing us that they can destroy us whenever they choose. This is not a war to them, it is a lesson. What are your orders, my emperor? Voreth looked at the general, and there was something dead in his eyes, something that had finally broken. Send the rest of the fleet, all of it, every ship we have, my emperor, if they have more vessels like that one. I know. Voreth's voice was cold, but I will not surrender. If we are to fall, we will fall fighting. Send the fleet. The second attack was even larger than the first. Every warship the hegemony could muster was thrown at the human defensive line. This time there was not just one human vessel waiting for them. There were 100. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 6 hours. The humans did not kill unless they had to. Their strange weapons disabled ships by the thousands, leaving them drifting and helpless. When hegemony commanders ordered planetary bombardments in desperation, their weapons failed to fire. When they tried to ram human ships directly, their engines died just before impact. It was not a battle, it was a demonstration of absolute control. The tribunal will convene in 6 months. You have until then to decide what you want to do, but I want you to know Something Admiral. Admiral, I watched the recording of our first encounter, the battle where my ship evaded your fleet. Do you know what I saw? The Zara shook her head. I saw someone following orders she did not believe in, someone who knew even then that something was wrong. You fired because you were told to fire, not because you wanted to. Chun's eyes held something that might have been compassion. That does not excuse what you have done, but it suggests that you might be capable of becoming something better. Think about that. In the months ahead she left, the Zara stood alone in the throne room, surrounded by the ruins of an empire. 6 months later the tribunal began. It was held on a neutral world, one that had never been part of the hegemony or the stellar union. Representatives from every surviving species gathered there. Humans served as observers and peacekeepers, but they did not judge. They left that to the victims. The trials lasted for years. Thousands of hegemony officials were called to answer for their actions. Some were found innocent or shown mercy. Others were sentenced to long imprisonment or exile. A few, those responsible for the worst atrocities, were executed by the peoples they had wronged. Admiral Lazara testified at her own trial. She did not make excuses. She did not claim she was only following orders. She told the truth about everything she had done, every order she had given, every life she had taken or allowed to be taken. The tribunal found her guilty of crimes against multiple species, but they also recognized her cooperation and her apparent willingness to change. Her sentence was not death, but service. She was ordered to spend the rest of her life working to help the people she had once oppressed. She accepted the judgment without complaint. Commander Sarah Chun attended the final day of the tribunal's first session. She watched as the representatives of the victim species delivered their verdicts. As justice was done, not through revenge but through law. When it was over, she returned to the Wanderer and prepared to depart. The stellar union's work here was nearly done. The galaxy would have to find its own way forward. From this point, before she left, she sent one final message. It was broadcast across every world that have been part of the hegemony, every world that have witnessed its fall. People of the galaxy, the Valorian hegemony is finished, not because we destroyed it, but because it destroyed itself. Empires built on cruelty cannot last. Power without justice is just violence with a longer reach. We did not come here as conquerors. We came as witnesses. We came to ensure that the truth was told and that the victims had their voices heard. Now that work is done. The future is yours to build. You can create something better than what came before, or you can repeat the same mistakes. That choice belongs to each of you. We will be watching, not to judge, not to interfere, just to remember, because memory is how we learn. Memory is how we grow. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders. There is room for everyone. There is time for everyone. Build something worthy of the stars. The message ended. The Wanderer lifted off from the neutral world and climbed toward space. Chun stood on the bridge, watching the planet shrink below her. Beside her, her first officer spoke. Do you think they will learn? Some will. Chun said, some always do. That is enough. And the others, the universe, will teach them eventually. It always does. She turned away from the view screen and gave the order to engage engines. The Wanderer leaped forward, accelerating to speeds that would have been impossible for any hegemony ship. Behind it, a galaxy struggled to rebuild itself from the ashes of empire, and somewhere in the void, humanity watched. Patient, silent, remembering they have been watching for 800 years. They would watch for 800 more if they had to, because that was what they had chosen to be, not conquerors, not judges, just witnesses, keeping the memory of the past alive so that the future might be different. The stars stretched out before the wanderer, infinite and full of possibility. The empire was gone, something new was beginning, and humanity was there to see. It happened, the end of the Valorian hegemony came not with a great battle, but with a whisper on the 11th day, after the first human ships crossed into hegemony territory. Emperor Voreth the Eternal sat alone in his throne room. The reports on his desk painted a picture of complete collapse. The military was broken, the fleets were destroyed or captured, the rebellions had spread to nearly every world. His empire, 12,000 years of glory and conquest, was crumbling around him. His advisors had fled, his guards had abandoned their posts, his family had barricaded themselves in the palaces, inner chambers, too afraid to face what was coming. Only Vor remained in the throne room, staring at the great doors that had once welcomed kings and conquerors from across the galaxy. Soon those doors would open for the last time. He could hear the sounds of fighting in the distance. His own palace guards were battling against rebels who had breached the outer walls. Valorans fighting Valorans, servants and soldiers who had once been loyal now turning against the crown. Human information releases had done their work well. Too many people knew the truth now. Too many could no longer pretend that these power was just a right. The throne room doors opened slowly. Bar expected human soldiers. He expected the conquerors to come for him, to drag him from his throne and parade him before the galaxy as a trophy. He had prepared himself for that final humiliation, but it was not humans who walked through those doors. Thought it was General Lexer, his most trusted military commander. Behind him were a dozen soldiers, all Valorans, all wearing the uniforms of the Imperial Guard. Morith smiled bitterly. So not even you remain loyal? Dexfer stopped a few paces from the throne. His face was unreadable, but his hands were steady on his weapon. The hegemony is finished, he said. Everyone knows it. The humans have won without even trying to kill us. They have shown the galaxy what we really are, and the galaxy has turned against us, and you think killing me will save you? That the humans will reward you for delivering my body? I do not care about rewards, Dexter said quietly. I care about my people, the Valorans. We will survive this one way or another, but we cannot survive if you keep fighting. The humans are patient, but they will not wait forever. If you do not surrender, they will do what they have been avoiding. They will start destroying instead of disabling. Voreth rose from his throne. He was old now, older than any Valoran had a right to be, but he still carried himself with the dignity of an emperor. I will not surrender, he said. I would rather die than you will have your wish. The shot was quick and clean. Voreth fell without a sound, his body crumpling at the foot of the throne he had occupied for 300 years. The crown rolled from his head and came to rest against the cold stone floor. Bixra looked at the body for a long moment. Then he turned to his soldiers. Send a message to the humans. Tell them the Emperor is dead. Tell them we are ready to talk. Admiral Lara received the news. While orbiting Valoria Prime, she felt nothing when she heard that Varth was dead. No grief, no relief, just a hollow emptiness that came from realizing that everything she had served was now truly over. Commander Sarah Chan's ship, the Wanderer, arrived at Valoria Prime 3 hours later. It descended through the atmosphere alone without escort or protection and landed in the palace courtyard where emperors had once received tribute from conquered worlds. Chun walked down the landing ramp with 2 other humans behind her. She wore simple uniform, gray and unadorned. No weapons that Dara could see, no armor. Just a middle-aged woman with gray in her hair, walking into the heart of what had been the greatest empire in the galaxy. The SS Era met her at the bottom of the ramp. The Admiral Chun said with a small nod, "Commander." The Zara studied the human carefully. "You come without guards, without weapons. Are you not afraid? Should I be?" The Zara considered the question. A month ago she would have said yes. She would have ordered Chen captured or killed without hesitation. Now, after everything that had happened, she was no longer sure of anything. "No," she said finally, "I suppose not." They walked together into the palace. The halls that had once been filled with courtiers and guards were empty now. The golden decorations seemed tarnished, the great murals of conquest somehow smaller than they had been before. They entered the throne room where Vorith's body still lay. Chun looked at it without expression. "Who did this?" she asked. "General Dexfer, one of our own." He believed it was the only way to end the fighting. Was he right? The Zara did not answer immediately. She walked to the throne and stood before it, looking at the empty seat where so many emperors had ruled. "The hegemony is finished," she said. "We all know it. The rebellions have made that clear. Even without your involvement, our subjects no longer fear us. Our soldiers no longer believe in us. Our people no longer trust their own government." She turned to face Chun. "You have destroyed us without firing a single killing shot. I would be impressed if I were not so tired." Chun walked to stand beside her. "We did not destroy you. We simply told the truth. Everything that followed came from within. Your subjects chose to rebel. Your soldiers chose to stop fighting. Your people chose to question what they had been told. We just gave them the information they needed to make those choices. And what happens now? You say you do not want to conquer us. You say you do not want to rule over us. But someone must lead. Someone must maintain order. That is not for us to decide." Chun said, "The Valorans will choose their own leaders. The conquered peoples will choose their own paths. The galaxy will find its own balance in the crimes. The species we destroyed, the worlds we burned, what justice is there for them?" Chen was quiet for a moment. "That is why we are here, to ensure that justice is done not by human hands, by the hands of the survivors, the descendants of those you wronged, the peoples you tried to erase." She pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic display appeared, showing worlds across the galaxy. "We have been in contact with every species that survived hegemony. Rule, the hollow ones who remain, the distant cousins of the Kethmari who escaped the genocide, all the others who have lived under your domination for generations. They have agreed to form a tribunal, a court that will examine the hegemonies history and determine what must be done. Desara felt a chill run through her. Trial. Many trials, everyone who held power in the hegemony will be called to answer for their actions, emperors, admirals, generals, governors, those who gave orders and those who carried them out, including me, including you. The Zara closed her eyes. She had known this was coming from the moment the first human message arrived. She had known that the reckoning would be personal. And if we are found guilty, that will be for the tribunal to decide. We will not influence their judgment. We will only ensure that the process is fair and that the truth is heard. You expect us to accept judgment from species we conquered, from people who have every reason to want us dead. Chun smiled. Sadly, we expect nothing. We only offer this path as an alternative to destruction. The tribunal is not mandatory. Any Valoran who refuses to participate is free to leave hegemony space and start over somewhere else. Many will probably choose that option. But those who stay, those who want to rebuild something better here, will have to face what was done in their name. The Zara opened her eyes and looked at the human commander. Why do you care? Why spend 800 years preparing for this? Why not just conquer us yourselves and be done with it? Chen was quiet for a long time before answering. Because we remember, she deactivated the holographic display and put the device away. Humans have a long history. Before we reached the stars, we spent thousands of years doing to each other what the hegemony has done to others: conquest, slavery, genocide. We are not innocent. We know what it means to build civilizations on suffering, but we also learned slowly, painfully over many generations. We learned that power without justice leads to ruin. That empire is built on cruelty eventually collapse. That the only way to truly win is to build something that deserves to survive. When we found the hegemony, we saw ourselves a younger version of what we had once been. We watched you make the same mistakes we made. We hoped you would learn the same lessons we learned. You did not, so we are here to help you learn them now. The Zara looked at the human woman, this stranger who had traveled across the galaxy to deliver both judgment and mercy. And if we fail, if we cannot learn, then you will fade away like every empire that came before. Not destroyed by us, but destroyed by the consequences of your own choices. That is not a threat, it is simply history. We have seen it happen many times. Chun turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused and looked back.